Shalom, 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 everybody. Welcome again to the congregation of Yashra'al. I'm going to be, obviously, your teacher for this afternoon. Well, it's still early morning, all right? It's 11 o'clock. I know we're kind of bright and early. We usually get started a little bit later. But I said, hey, what the heck? Let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. I'm sure everybody's pretty much up by this time. Once again, my name is Kasada Ba of the Congregation of Yashra'al, and we're going to do a show today entitled, What Are We to Do with Genesis, the book of Bereshit, the 3rd chapter, verse 16. And I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedule to join us here this morning. And we're going to begin, as always, Mishpachah. We're going to start off with the Father's Prayer. And then we'll go ahead and get the ball rolling with today's class, today's services, all right? So on the far left, you're going to see the Father's Prayer in Hebrew, which is in Hebrew. And then on the right-hand side, you're going to see the Father's Prayer, you're going to see the Father's Prayer in English on the left side. And then you're going to find the Father's Prayer in Hebrew on the right side. So we'll start on the left side first, left to right in English. Our Father, which art in heaven, set apart be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Father, we pray that you give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not, Father, into temptation, but deliver us, Father, from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, and all esteem belongs to the Father. And we thank you for sending your mediator, YAHUSHA HaMashiach, to be that atoning sacrifice, that mediator for the nation of Yashra'al, which is the nation of Israel. And we say hallelujah. Now we're going to do it in Hebrew, Mishpachah. Abinu, Shabbat Shamayim, Yit Kudat Shemka, O Yit Barak Melkutka, Retsunka Yahiyeh Ishui, Ba Shamayim, U Ba Aretz, Ut At Ain Lat Menu Tamadit, Umakulanu, Chata'atenu, Ka'asher Anaknu, Mulchalin, U'al Tabi Ainu Layide Naseyon, Usham Ranu Makal Ra. All esteem once again belongs to the Father. All esteem belongs to the Father through his Son Yahushua HaMashiach, who is the mediator, who is the atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. So once again, Mr. Bakar, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy schedule to join the congregation of Yashra'al here this morning. And we do have a grand opening at our new congregation hall out in Roswell. And I'll be giving out that address before next week is out. All right, so those of you that would be in the Roswell, Alpharetta area, we're going to welcome you to our grand opening, which should be taking place in 3 weeks. And I'll be sending out that address on Facebook within the next, give me a couple of days, and I'll send that address out to you. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, once again, Mishpachah, this is the congregation of Yashra'al in the Commonwealth of Israel. Let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. Mishpachah, this is my question to you, all right? I've been dealing with, I believe, a very controversial topic for quite some time now, all right? Quite some time. I had the honor and the privilege to be on Prince's show last week, and I talked a little bit about the book of Genesis. I didn't go too in-depth with it. I wanted to. I'm always looking for questions regarding statements that I'm making. I just want to make sure that everybody is crystal clear in what the Father is sharing with me now in regards to how important it is for us to establish order in our households. So, Mashalom Kamishbekah, I pray that everyone is doing well. The purpose of this presentation is to make both our brothers and sisters aware of a common enemy whose main purpose is to destroy the Israelite family. Once again, we have a common enemy, and the enemy is trying to destroy brothers and sisters the Israelite family. My supporting argument for this claim, we're going to jump right into it. My supporting argument to this claim is the book of Shemot, or the book of Exodus. The first chapter I want to start off with, Mr. Bakar. The first chapter, and I want to begin with verse 8, and I want to read down to verse 22. So that's the book of Exodus, the first chapter, verses 8 to 22. Now we have, hold on one second here. Okay, here we go. Now, this is still not right. Hold on one second here. Okay, here we are. Now, Exodus, the first chapter, verse 8. We're going to read down to verse 22, Mr. Bakar. It says, a new king who did not know about Joseph came to power in Egypt. Once again, a new king who did not know about Joseph came to power in Egypt. He said to his people, so we see now that there's a difference between the children of Israel and the children of Egypt. And so the new king said to his people, look, the Israelites are more numerous and powerful than we are. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them. Otherwise, they will multiply further. And when war breaks out, they will join our enemies and fight against us and leave the country. So the Egyptians assigned taskmasters over the Israelites to oppress them with forced labor. They built Pithom and Ramses as supply cities for Pharaoh. But the more they oppressed them, which are the Israelites, the more they, which are the Israelites, multiplied and spread so that the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. They worked the Israelites ruthlessly. Verse 14, and made their lives bitter with difficult labor in brick and mortar and in all kinds of field work. They ruthlessly imposed all this work on them. Let's jump to the King James Version. Verse 15. And the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Yashra'al, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, the man carries the seed, the man impregnates the woman. Anything that comes from the man belongs to the man. And the children are supposed to be in subjection to the mom, as the mom is in subjection to the husband. This is just the order of things. But notice now what I want you to do. When you help the Hebrew women give birth, observe them as they deliver. If the child is a son, kill him. But if it's a daughter, she may live. The midwives, however, feared the father and did not do so as the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this and let the boys live? The midwife said to Pharaoh, the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife can get to them. So we see now that even the nature, the whole nature of pregnancy, when you look at the Egyptian woman as she goes through her labor pains versus those of our Israelites, the Israelites did not, at this junction here, they did not have to go through a lot of pain, but did they have pain? Absolutely, they had pain, but nothing in comparison to what the Egyptians were going through. All right, and so now again, the Israelite women were different than the Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwife can get to them. So Elohim, or let me go back here, And so Yahuwah said, and so Yahuwah was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very numerous. Since the midwives feared Elohim, or Yahuwah, excuse me, he gave them families. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So he blessed the midwives that they were able to have families, children. Pharaoh then commanded all his people, you must throw every son born to the Hebrews into the Nile, but let every daughter live. What we're trying to establish here, Mishpachah, first and foremost, if there are no males, the women become prey. The adversary, our enemies, the other nations now would take our women as spoil. They would then go into our women and bring forth their seed because they're now the coverings for our women. So that it's very important for our women to understand, and actually both men and women to understand or overstand, is that men are the coverings. There is a hierarchy, and it is very important, once again, that we understand the history and letting us know now why we're in the situation that we're into today. There's a plot, as I said earlier. Brothers and sisters must be aware of a common enemy whose main purpose is to destroy the Israelite family. And let's go now to the book of Matthew to further prove this. We're going to go to the book of Matthew. We're going to look at chapter 2. And we're going to read verses 1 through 16. 1 through 16. After Mashiach was born in Bethlehem, which is the house of bread, Bethlehem, of Judah in the days of King Herod, who was an Edomite, a convert, wise men from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born king of the Yahudim? We're going to give Jewish folks back that title. All right, they can have that. They are Jewish and they are Jews. We are Yahudim. And there is a difference between Yahudim and Jews. I say that to say is that as we begin to recapture our name and our inheritance, let's make sure that we do our own diligent research. All right. So when we come out of the Christian church and we're coming out of Islam and all these other denominations that are out here, make sure that you do your own personal readings. Because what is happening now is that a lot of times when we come out of these other religions, we're believing that those that are in Jerusalem today are the actual people, and we believe the customs that they're following is correct. And if you do a real diligent search on it, you will find out that a lot of the things that they're doing is based upon the Mishnah and the Talmud. So be very careful. So once again, where is he who has been born king of the Jews? And we're going to say here now Yahudim, Judah. For we saw his star. His star is representing his constellation. All right. When you go to the book of Matthew, the book of Genesis, the first chapter, verses 14 to 15, we were told now how to observe time by watching, by observing the sun, the moon, and the stars. We don't worship the sun, the moon, and the stars, but the sun, the moon, and the stars are telling a story. And these magi's, who were astrologers, were able to find the Mashiach by observing this constellation. Let's read on. When Herod king heard this, he was deeply disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. All right, which is very important because King Herod, okay, he was the king of the Yahudim. He was a convert. He was an Edomite, an Idumean. He was deeply disturbed, in all Jerusalem with him. When it says in all Jerusalem with him, we're talking about all the religious leaders we're talking about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, because they all knew. Especially, I'm going to say here the Pharisees and the Sadducees, because they were the lawyers or the doctors of Torah. So anyway, verse 4. So he assembled all the chief priests, okay, and scribes of the people and asked them where the Messiah or the Mashiach would be born. All right? In Bethlehem of Judea, they told him, because this is what was written by the prophet. And you, brethren, in the land of Judah, are by no means less among the rulers of Judah, because out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Or we can have it read, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people possessive, my people possessive, my people possessive, my people Israel. All right? Make sure that this is clear. Then Herod secretly summoned the wise men and asked them the exact time the star appeared. So they're observing constellations here. He sent them to Bethlehem, or Bethlehem, the house of bread, and said, go and search carefully or diligently for the young child. When you find him, report back to me so that I too can go and worship him. After hearing the king, they went on their way, and there it was, the star they had seen at his rising. It led them until it came and stopped above the place where the child was. That is miraculously. That is something there. Can you imagine now a star, a constellation moving? And we have these magi's, okay, these astrologers now who were able to now understand the movements of the constellations, and they found when the star, this constellation reached its final destination, they found Yahushua HaMashiach. When they saw the star, they were overwhelmed with joy. Entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. And falling to their knees, they worshipped him, the Mashiach. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now we see 3 items here. It does not mean that there was only 3 magi's. It does not say that. All right, so you can have, it could have been 10, it could have been 15, it could have been 20, it could have been 2. It just says that the magi's here actually brought gifts to the Mashiach. It has been rumored that Daniel understood the prophecy of the coming of the Mashiach. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, all right? But I found it interesting now was that it is understood. It is understood, being that Daniel didn't have any children, that Daniel actually took his wealth, understanding that there would be the forecoming of the Mashiach, that the wealth that he actually had it in store. And what he did now was that he entrusted it now to certain men down the line, because we're talking about after Israel came, actually from 70 years of captivity until the coming of the Mashiach, we have roughly about 490 years. All right. So anyway, and he left his inheritance to the Mashiach that was due to come. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned in a dream, not to go back to Herod, they returned to their own country by another route. After they were gone, an angel or a messenger of YAHUAH appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, now this is going to be very important. That word angel there is messenger. That word angel there is Elohim. So an Elohim singular, a messenger singular of the sovereign appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and stay there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to kill him. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and escaped to Egypt. He stayed there until Herod's death, so that what was spoken by the sovereign through the prophet might be fulfilled. Out of Egypt, or out of Egypt I called my son. Then Herod, when he realized that he had been outwitted by the wise men, flew into a rage. He gave orders to massacre all the boys, not girls. He gave orders to massacre all of the boys in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old and under, in keeping with the time he had learned from the wise men. Then was spoken through Yirmiyahu, the prophet was fulfilled. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and she refused to be consoled because there were no more. So, Mishpachah, again, this common enemy has to be identified. And some of the modern day enemies would be Margaret Sanger, who is responsible for setting up a lot of these abortion clinics in our neighborhood. And we know that our women, and being that a man impregnates a woman, and oftentimes I know personally where the men were also involved in the decision making and telling the woman that, hey, listen, we need to get an abortion because we just got married, we're young, and we need to go see the world. But that was years ago. But now we have this thing where women have been given the authority where they don't even need the man's opinion, suggestion, on anything. My body, my choice. So, as we know, that is coming back to haunt a lot of our Hebrew brothers and sisters. But once again, we have a common enemy that we must make sure that we understand what is our role and what is our responsibility in these end times here. So let us go on. Let us also acknowledge that our father Adam relinquished his responsibility of being head of his household, which brought about serious consequences that still plague us to this very day. The ultimate goal of the serpent is to take away the masculinity. The masculinity now is the power, is the male, which is the headship, from the divine structure that the Father created from the beginning. He does this by using the closest thing to man. Once again, he does this by using the closest thing to man, which is his woman. The feminine isn't a threat to the adversary. Listen to this real close. The feminine isn't a threat to the adversary because she has already been weaponized against her husband. Once again, the feminine isn't a threat to the adversary because she has already been weaponized against her husband. And we're going to prove that now in the book of Genesis, the 3rd chapter, Genesis, the 3rd chapter, what do we want to go to? Let's go to 3 and 1. 3 and 1. Watch how this reads. And oftentimes I find is that if we take our time and read these scripts, we're going to find out that the answer is right in front of our face. Watch this now. It says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which the sovereign YAHUAH Elohim had made. And he said unto the woman, have Elohim said, you shall not eat of every green tree of the garden. Our first problem here is that the adversary is having a conversation with another man's woman. And this conversation that the adversary is having with the woman is he's challenging the Father or YAHUAH himself. Because Lord God only means he is the God of the Elohim. So we have Lord YAHUAH, God Elohim. Lord YAHUAH is Lord, Master of Elohim. And he said unto the woman, yea, have Elohim said. Now he's attacking now Elohim. Have Elohim said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, so she's now exchanging dialogue with the adversary. And once you begin to question or have conversation with the adversary, at this point here, the adversary already has her. Already has her. Because just the idea of interacting or contemplating what he's saying now puts you in jeopardy. Because the word serpent is nakash, and it means whisperer, an enchanter, to cast a spell. So what is happening at this moment is the adversary, by speaking to Eve, these are not just ordinary words. These are words of, it's a spell. He is now casting a spell upon our mother Eve. The woman responds and said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said unto the woman, so they're having this dialogue here. So he is penetrating her mind, and she's receiving the information. So in order for there to be a virus, as we see here, not Adam now, but Nakash has now, he now has her attention. He has now penetrated her mind, and so now she's receiving the information that he's feeding into her, because the only gift, and it's a bad gift, the only thing that the adversary has to offer Eve is to have rulership over her ish. This is what's happening here. And Eve here, or the woman here, is entertaining the thought. I'm going to say it again. And it's going to all fall in line as the story continues. What the adversary is doing, he's giving the woman opportunity to have headship, hierarchy over her husband. Let's read on. This is my argument, Mishpachar. This is your brother Kasadaba's argument. Marital hierarchy was introduced at creation. Marital hierarchy was introduced at creation, where the husband was to lovingly exercise authority over his wife, and the wife was to respectfully submit to her husband. And that's right, I said it. Submit to her husband, and the husband is to lovingly exercise authority over her. The Father designed men to provide for and protect their wives. Genesis 2:15. Let's go there. Genesis 2:15. We're going to take our time with this. Make sure that there's no misunderstandings. Genesis, or the book of Bereshit 2:15. And YAHUAH Elohim, because YAHUAH is sovereign over the Elohim, which is plural. So YAHUAH Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden. Watch this now. Look at his responsibilities. To dress and to keep it. So I want to make sure that I dissect this thing as much as I can. And Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him in the garden. The word put is nuach. Nuach. It's the Strong's number 5117. And it means to rest, to settle down, to remain. This is the Hebrew word study, transliteration, pronunciation, etymology, and grammar of the word nuach. Okay, nuach, Strong number 5117. And it means to repose, to have rest, to be quiet, to cause to rest, to give rest, to make quiet. The Brown Jarvis Briggs Old Testament Hebrew English lexicon gives the definition. It's basically the same, which means to settle down, to use in a great variety of applications, literally and figuratively. To dwell, to stay, to let fall, to place, to let alone, to withdraw, to give comfort. And then when you look at the Strong's Hebrew and Chaldean dictionary of the Old English now, it's pretty much given the same thing. All right, so nothing is pretty much changing with the definition, but I wanted everybody to understand how important it is for us to dissect everything. So Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him, so this was now supposed to have been a place of rest for Adam, and that place of rest now was in the Garden of Eden. So again, Adam was in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden. So there's the Eden, and then there's the Garden of Eden. Two separate places, but let me say this now. How are we going to explain this? So there's no interruptions. I want to make sure that everything is crystal clear. Look at it this way. You have a house, and this is just an example. You have a house, and the owners of the house lives in the house. Now, what usually lives in the garden is those that assist those that live in the house. So the garden belongs to the owners who lived in Eden, and Adam was placed in the Garden of Eden to dress it. To dress it. The word dress means abad. It means to work. It means to serve in the garden. Not in the Eden, but in the garden. Adam was placed in the garden to work and to serve, to labor, to work, to do work. And I'm looking at the definition now. It's the Strong's number 5647. It's a Hebrew word study, transliteration, pronunciation, etymology, and grammar of the word. It means to labor, to work, to do work. Watch what becomes very interesting with this definition, Mr. McCall. It also means to serve as with Levitical services. So this is like some of the arguments that I have and the headship in the congregation of Yashra'al. We teach that Adam, working in the Garden of Eden, was actually a priest. Adam was a priest working in the Garden of Eden. It says also to serve the Father. How do you serve the Father other than priestly services, being righteous, knowing how to handle issues inside of your house? Jerusalem, the whole land of Israel, was supposed to have been a place, a city of righteousness. And all righteous instructions were supposed to have been coming from Jerusalem. And the focal point was the temple, where the priests now would actually do priestly services. And this is what I'm trying to draw here. When we begin to dissect and look at Adam being in the garden and what was his role or what was his responsibility in the garden, his role, his responsibility in the garden now was to live a righteous life, to dwell safely in the garden as a priest, to dress it and to keep it. To keep it, well, to keep it, which means to guard, is the Hebrew word shamar. The Strong's number 8104. It means to keep. It means to guard. The question then should be, to keep it from who? To guard it from who? To observe it, to keep it, to guard it from what? To give heed, to keep, to have charge of. So Adam was given a responsibility to keep it, which means to guard, to protect it, to have charge of, to keep, to guard, to keep watch. Interesting. To keep watch, because we have now the adversary who was more crafty than any of the beasts of the field. Of the field now, my argument is that Adam's responsibility was to keep, to guard, to observe, to have charge, to watch, to ward, to protect his Isha from the adversary. This is the reason why I said, and let's go back here. I want to make sure that you follow along. I said in the beginning, the purpose of this presentation is to make both our brothers and sisters aware of a common enemy whose main purpose is to destroy the Israelite family. And Adam now, what Adam did now is that he relinquished his rights, his responsibility now as being head of the house, because he loved his Isha more than YAHUAH Elohim. Let's read on. Marital hierarchy was introduced at creation, where the husband was to lovingly exercise authority over his wife, and the wife was to respectfully submit to her husband. The father designed men to provide for and protect their wives. Genesis 2:15, we just read that. I am not an advocate of men staying home and women working. I'm not an advocate of that. Now, of course, if there's a situation, if the man is sick, all right, and we know that the bills have to be paid, I can understand it for that reason. But if that man is capable, able to work now, for him to stay at home and for the mother to go out and work, no, I am not in agreement with that. I don't care what type of arrangements, whatever it is that was made. That does not fit what this is saying here. So let's read on. The father designed men to provide for and protect their wives. Genesis 2:15. He designed women to be helpers to their husbands. That's Genesis 2:18. Let's look at that for a second. Let's look at this, because I know a lot of times this rubs both brothers and sisters the wrong way. When we begin to talk about divine Torah order, the way that it was from the beginning, and you try talking to brothers and sisters about submission and who's supposed to work and who's supposed to stay at home and take care of the children, when you begin to talk like that, the new modern man and the new modern woman comes out, oh, I can't do that. That's too much of a problem. That's too much trouble. I can't do that. And we do know that structurally, the modern day Israelite man is not as strong as our forefathers. And the modern Israelite woman is in no comparison as strong as their foremothers. And what we're trying to do is reestablish right order inside of the household. 2:18. And Yahuwah Elohim said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a help meet for him. She is supposed to be an assistant. An assistant, assistant in assistance to him. As he provides to do the things now that are Torah based and making sure that there's food, shelter, and clothing. If there's children, it is her responsibility now to assist him while he's at work. Her responsibility is to nourish, educate, and train the children. I don't like role reversals. I am not saying that the man doesn't interact with the children. I did not say that. I'm talking about main responsibilities. Because too often I hear where the woman is going to work, she's going to work now, she's doing 10, 12, 14 hours a day. She still has to come home. She still has to cook. She still has to take care of the children and still perform sexual responsibilities to her husband. That does not make sense at all. At all. My argument here today, Saturday, December the 23rd, 2023, is to try and reestablish right order back into the household again. Now, Mr. Picard, come to find out that there are three views of Genesis 3:16 for the most part. Now, however, the fall corrupted this relationship and introduced strife between husband and wife. Who did this? The adversary. Sin has corrupted everything, including marriage. But is this marital strife specifically foretold by Yahuwah in Genesis 3:16? When the Father pronounced judgment against Eve, he said unto her, your desire, watch this now, your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but it is his responsibility to rule over you. I'm going to read it to you again. The correct rendering of Genesis 3:16, the woman's desire shall be contrary to her husband, but he needs to take his respectful position inside of that household and restore right order. But it's going to be a job. It's going to be a job because the adversary had the conversation with Eve. She has already been empowered by him. This is the reason why we are now living in a matriarchal system. Not a patriarchal system, but a matriarchal system is what we live in today. Mishpachah, as far as establishing righteousness in your house, the woman, she knows that if things don't go her way, and if she's a weak woman, she don't need your permission for anything. Because the way that this government is set up, my body, my choice. If I want to dissolve this relationship, I don't have to follow Torah. And there's a lot of women in Israel have taken that avenue. When things don't go right my way, as the old saying goes, if mama's not happy, nobody's going to be happy. Where did that thought, where did that idea come from? That if mama's not happy, nobody's going to be happy. What gave our sisters now this understanding that if I'm not happy, the boat would not sail? I will cause hell and destruction in this house if I'm not heard, if I'm not respected. Who told her that? This is the reason why we see in today's society, facts are facts. I did classes on this already. Over 80% of marriages are dissolved or divorces are started, implicated, applied for by the woman. She initiates and does this 85%. More than any other ethnic group on the planet Earth. The so-called black woman behaves that way. And basically nobody reprimands her. Now, I'm not saying that a woman is supposed to stay in an abusive relationship, but even that has to be defined. If you tell a woman no today, if you tell a woman no, stop, shut up, listen, you need to go sit down. Today, that is looked at as abusive. He's talking abusive to me. How can my husband tell me to stop talking? How can my husband tell me no? How can my husband tell me, listen, you know what, I can't do this and I can't do that. I'm not your damn child. You are my responsibility. I cover you. You're my responsibility. I cover this house. These are the rules and regulations that the Father placed from the very beginning. Once again, marital hierarchy was introduced at creation, when the husband was to lovingly exercise authority over his wife, and the wife was to respectfully submit to her husband. Some of the books that you need to read is a book by Gina Murray. Okay, in understanding structure inside of a Hebrew family. Gina Murray. These are some very good books, I believe, that would help out a lot in giving us a better understanding on how to operate inside of our houses. Let me see if I can get the title of that book right quick. Hold on one second, Ms. Ricard. The title of that book is, no, that's not it. I'll try to get the title of that book because she has 2 books out. Actually, I think there's 3 books out, and she does a very good job. Babe, you know the name of that book by Gina Murray? I think I have it here. Let's see here. Because I want this book to go out. Oh, it's called The Them in Him by Gina Murray. The Them in Him by Gina Murray. And there's another book by Gina Murray, Biblical Family Structure, Biblical Manhood, The Way of the Kinsman Redeemer. So anybody that's interested, I really would suggest you take a very strong look at those 2 books there, because this is a woman telling women that you're out of pocket. And another sister, I believe, that can help give us a lot of insight on how family structure should be organized is a woman by the name, actually she has a YouTube show called Crimson Cure. Now she's a Muslim, but she follows a lot of biblical practices, and the Muslim community overall has it better than the Hebrew Israelite community. Once again, overall, comparing apples with apples here, the Muslim community have a better structure on family than the Hebrew Israelites do. And the reason why I'm throwing mud at the Hebrew Israelite community family, and not everybody, okay, let me just say that not everybody. It's just that Ishmael learned family structure from Abraham, and Isaac and Ishmael were brothers. But they seem to have a better understanding on structure, the importance of sacrificing for the next generation than Israelites do. As soon as a man or a woman is not happy, things are not going my way, he or she, and especially she'll leave in a heartbeat. You can't trust her as far as you can throw her because she has made a pact with the adversary. When you look at the book of Genesis, the book of Bereshit, the 3rd chapter, verse 1, she entertained the conversation. Your woman is not supposed to entertain, to dialogue as far as anything that has to do with anything that has to do with structure inside of your house. No man should be going to your Isha first. No man. I don't care who he is. Your Moray, your Zakkanes, whatever. He should be going to the leadership, the hierarchy first, and talking to that man and not the woman. Anybody that is speaking to the woman first, that person is going through the back door. And a thief comes through the back door. Come through the front door, cross that threshold, and talk to that man first. That's the way that things are done. No woman can remove her covering on her own. That is nowhere documented in Scripture. It's not there. This is part of the lies and the tricks that the adversary has shared with Eve in the garden. I can do my own thing. Oh, no, you can't. You were not able to do your own thing in your mother and father's house because your father now was the head of the household and you were never an independent individual outside of headship. Let me say that again. The woman was never on her own to make her own decisions. Never. It doesn't exist. Just like one of my brothers has shared with me. He said, Kassad, have you ever noticed that it said that the father could disallow a woman's vow, but it never said that the father could disallow a son's vow? That son has to learn, as we used to say back in the day, your word is your bond. So he has to teach him structure on how to stand on his square, or as they say now, stand on your business. He has to learn that. But a woman, it was always supposed to have been under the authority of a covering, a man. Not two women living together and the other woman is covering me. No. We're going back to basic Torah principles 101. Let's read on. However, the fall corrupted this relationship and introduced strife between husband and wife. Sin, chata'ah, has corrupted everything, especially including marriage. But is this marital strife, specifically foretold by YAHUAH in Genesis 3:16? When YAHUAH pronounced judgment against Eve, he said unto her, your desire should be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. This is in Genesis, the 3rd chapter, verse 16 in the ESV version. So let's study and see what this version is all about. The difficulty I found in this verse has led to several interpretations. There are Christians today who argue that there was no hierarchy between man and woman prior to the fall. Can you imagine that? Yet now, Adam had a relationship with the Father prior to Eve. He was given dominion over all of the animals. He named the animals. He knew male and female, or male and female. He was told to guard, to protect, to dress the Garden of Eden. All of this now was given to him. This was his responsibility. His responsibility. So the preparation, the building, and the understanding of the Eden, of the garden now, was given to Adam. So when Eve came in, the Eden was already set up. She didn't have to name any animals. And better yet, if you follow the story closely, the woman didn't even give herself her name. Adam gave her her name. Look at that. My argument is this. Anything that comes from you, anything that you name, belongs to you. My argument is that Eve came from Adam, which means that Eve belongs to Adam. And the two are supposed to be one flesh. One flesh, with Adam having rulership of everything that comes from Eve, which are the children. Those also belong to him. It all belongs to him, all of it, in righteousness. So she can't say, my choice, my body, or my body, my choice. She can't do that. Let's read on. The difficulty of this verse has led to several interpretations. There are Christians today who argue that there was no hierarchy between man and woman prior to the fall. Part of the view known as egalitarianism, that's what it's called now, however, assumes hierarchy and male headship were part of creation. There are three possible views that I've read, and I'm reading this article here. God or the Father's pronouncement in Genesis 3:16 could be this. Reaffirm the creation marital hierarchy as a continued blessing. That's the position that I take. Describes the perversion of marital roles or predict that the wife would desire to escape the husband's authority, but prescribe that the husband must exercise righteous rule to restrain his wife. Now, let me share something with you. I want to make it crystal clear. I am not advocating a man punching, slapping, putting his wife in a headlock, the figure four, body slamming. When it gets to that point where you have to now do all of this now to restrain an unlawful woman, it's time to let her go. Oh, you know what? Let me not be so harsh. Okay, I don't want to be harsh. If it gets to that point, what should have happened prior, there should have been counseling. Because obviously there's a problem inside of that relationship where somebody is not recognizing authority. And let me say this too. I don't, again, condone beating women in under no circumstances. I believe that. I believe it's easy just to walk away. That's what I'm going to teach my son. Just walk away, give each other some time, some space, and then try to hold some counseling. And we're going to try to reconcile this relationship here. Now, in other cultures, they do chastise, or they are allowed to chastise their women. This is the reason why I would strongly suggest that if a woman is not familiar with other cultures, I think she should stay here in America. Stay here. Because a lot of things that gets a pass here in America, you won't get that same pass in a lot of the other Muslim countries. Now, the type of chastisement that I see that is put upon, let's take for example, if a woman is caught in adultery, that man is chastised, and in certain cultures, he's actually even put to death. I've seen videos now of women receiving stripes for adultery. It's being stoned for that type of behavior. But some of the things that I see men, or I hear men abusing their wives for, she burnt the toast. She didn't put enough sugar in my tea. She turned the television while I was watching it. She ate the last box of the last box of Captain Crunch. No. I am a strong advocate of Yahushua HaMashiach. Acceptance for divorce, acceptance for fornication and adultery. And you were now trying to exercise this divorce, this karuth, because one day you just woke up and you don't feel like it no more. And you go out and then remarry. That's an abomination. I'm sticking by that. I'm not moving from that, because I personally believe that the Mashiach's reinstituting of how things were from the beginning supersedes anything that Moses has to say. And that was a temporary injunction. I'm not saying that Moses is in conflict with what the Mashiach is saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. But we're talking about those of us that are in the walk trying to restore righteous order back into the house. It is not permissible for a woman to go from man to man to man to man to man. It's simply not. And men now who are marrying women who have been in 5, 10, 15-year relationships, and they're not asking, whoa, you've been in a relationship for 10 years and you just walked away. Or whatever the situation might have been, why aren't you inquiring why that relationship of 10 years got dissolved? Why aren't you asking that? And did that husband give you a get? Papers of releasement. Did he do that? Were you being physically abused? Was your life in danger? Mr. Carr, we're adding sin upon sin. Can you imagine a man waking up and saying, listen, you know what? I can't do this no more. I'm going to now abandon my wife and children. And then when Shabbat services come up, he sits up in the bema or the pulpit and then teaches Torah rules and regulations, and he just left because he felt like it. His family, both men and women, are doing it. Let's read on. The third one, predict that the wife will desire to escape her husband's authority, but prescribes that the husband must exercise godly rule to restrain his wife. And once again, I'm not telling no man, and I don't accept any man punching his woman in the mouth, giving her, knocking out her teeth, busting up her lip, busting up her nose, giving her black eyes. Absolutely not. That is a major, major problem. Don't do that. The first perspective of Bereshit 3:16, view 1, which sees Genesis 3:16 as a reaffirmation of creational hierarchy. Wow, I like that. Genesis 3:16 as a reaffirmation of creational hierarchy takes the actions of both the husband and wife as positive. Oh, my sister Sharon is on the line. My apologies, sister. I'm here looking at the phone now. Knowledge is power, and Satan offered another form of knowledge other than what the Father offered Adam. Then it turned would tell Eve. Hallelujah. Excuse me. You on to something. The Father called out to Adam, but Adam and Eve were hiding. Absolutely. Adam and Eve understanding was limited in their being, and the Most High knew Lucifer's action, and the Father crested law was already in play with the separation of light from dark. Hallelujah. I'm glad that my sister is here and she's always on board. Hallelujah for that. Again, view 1, which sees Genesis 3:16 as a reaffirmation of creational hierarchy, takes the actions of both the husband and the wife as positive. The wife is devoted to her husband, and the husband leads her, I should have put righteousness, and the husband leads her in righteousness. Anytime a man is telling his Isha to do something illegally, to move drugs from state to state or from country to country, by putting packs inside of her, hoping that she can get past customs, or robbing liquor stores, grocery stores, anything like that. Any man that is telling his woman to get involved in threesomes, to be a whore out there on the street, girl, you better go out there and make that money while he stays at home, that is the works of the adversary. That couple needs to be brought to counsel, and the decision that the council has made regarding a man that is leading his Isha, that is leading his family in that direction, the decision of the council must stand. That cannot be tolerated in Israel, because the daughters of Israel were not supposed to be treated as whores. And a woman going from man to man is called a whore. A woman that leaves one relationship and goes to another relationship and another relationship is called a whore. I don't care who she is, a whore. That relationship is dissolved when that man dies. She is then free to remarry. A woman cannot have multiple sex partners. It is a lie from the pit of hell. It's a lie. A woman is not designed for her now to take on the germ of every man that she looks at. That causes confusion inside of the woman. The woman is a receiver. So what happens now when she's receiving different information that you have now given her? And that's what happened in the Garden of Eden. Eve was now defiled. Another man gave her information. She received it. Adam's responsibility was to guard and protect the garden, which means now that his commitment to the Father came first. But he put his Isha first. He did not use his father-given rights to exercise authority over his Isha, Eve. YAHUAH. He didn't do it. Let's read on. This fits the context of children in the preceding clause of 3:16. I guarantee you, because of this, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain, you should bring forth children. And thus pairs childbirth with the woman's desire, devotion to her husband, rather than introducing now a second judgment upon the woman. Together, this would mean that in spite of women enduring pain in childbearing, she will still be devoted to her husband and have children with him. Now, the challenge for this view is that the context of Genesis 3:16 deals with the father's judgment upon Eve. And thus it is hard to understand why the man's rule is mentioned here if it is a positive. The woman is going to be contrary to her husband, but he must rule over her. Let me see. I want to make sure everybody is understanding this. She will still be devoted to her husband and have children with him. The challenge for this view is that the context is going to be very important. The challenge for this view is that the context of Genesis 3:16 deals with the father's judgment upon Eve. And thus it is hard to understand why the man's rule is mentioned here if it is positive. One possibility is that since the woman broke from the authority of her husband in transgression, Genesis 3:6, the 3rd chapter, verses 1 through 6, the father redirected her to the place that suits her in creation. Come on now, you don't hear me. When you read Genesis, the 1st chapter, verses 1 through 6, the father redirected her to the place that suits her in creation. In this case, Genesis 3:16 is a summons to return to the creation subordination to the man. And if you're interested to know more about this, there's a man by the name of Werner Neuer, Man and Woman in Christian Perspective. Read page 80. All right. I can't do all of the homework for you. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what I'm reading and what the Father has shared with me. You can like it or don't like it. It's fine. But what I would like for you to do to keep the algorithm going, if you can please just hit the like button to keep the algorithm going, hit the share, just show some type of participation with all of this, Mr. McCarr. Let me know by leaving a message in the comment section if you have any questions with anything that I'm sharing so far. We're almost done. View number 2, which sees this as a perversion of creational hierarchy. And it has two possibilities. One option takes the actions of both the husband and the wife as negative. The wife is devoted to usurping her husband's authority, and the husband exercises an abusive authority over her, which I am not in agreement with. I see in other cultures where it talks about where a man can actually physically lay hands on her, but not to the point where it's abusive. My argument is not to put hands on her at all. That's my argument. Don't put hands on her at all. This is what I'm going to teach my son, and I'm going to also teach the daughter also. Don't put your hands on nobody. The woman should not be putting her hands on the man, and the man should not be putting his hands on the woman. If it gets to that point, counsel needs to be held immediately. Is that the end of the relationship? No. That is not the end of the relationship. What people need to understand is that we are constantly learning each other inside of these relationships. When you begin to look at relationships that have gone 20, 30, 40, and 50 years, listen to what they went through in order to get to that 30, 40, 50 mile marker. Listen to what it took to get there. And you're going to find out that it took a sacrifice. It was not all peaches and cream. They will tell you now is that things got better. It got better, but you will be shocked to find out what it took to get there. But today, our people will walk away from a 5, 10, 15, 20-year relationship, throw it away as if it was a bloody tampon. It means nothing to them. Brother, you was with that woman now for 10 years. You just walked away? Yeah, man, I got fed up with her. What did she do? She committed adultery? Nah, man. Fornication? Nah. I just wasn't feeling her no more. I wasn't happy. So you just threw her away and now you on to the next woman? Yeah, man. So this new woman that you're dealing with, what security is she going to have? Because if you threw away a 15-year relationship and you're now with this woman, how can the new woman not look at your behavior and what you just did with a 10, 15-year relationship? Because you now have a pattern of misbehavior and you're now in a new relationship. She's now supposed to trust that you're not going to do the same thing that you just did to that 10, 15-year relationship. And if any woman believes that, you know what I have to tell you, sister? There's cheese on the moon. No, there's a restaurant on the moon, and I want to sell it to you. If you believe that. And men do the same thing. Women who walk away from 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30-year relationships, and they can't give you a Torah reason why, because they're caught up in their feelings, whatever the case like that might be. No counseling or anything. I'm my own person. I can do the hell it is that I want to do. The Father came to me in a dream, and he told me that I can do this. And the new Negro believes that. I also have property on the moon that I want to sell you too. It is time for our people to wake up. We are so destroyed as a people. So destroyed. But most often what we like to do is jump up on YouTube and wrestle with other brothers about scripture, and there's chaos going on in your household, or you're not talking about the bigger picture. Why is it that the so-called Israelite man and the so-called Israelite woman, or the Israelite man and the Israelite woman, can't get along today? Why? Oh my gosh, let's read on. While the second option takes the wife's devotion a positive, but the husband ruled as negative. So the woman is devoted as positive, but the husband ruled as negative. Even when the wife is devoted to her husband, he may still abuse authority over her. That is not my perspective. View number 2 is a common historical view seen in Calvin's words that Eve had previously been subject to her husband, but that was a liberal and gentle subjection. I don't know what that means. Now, however, she is cast into servitude. The ESV adopts the first option of view 2. Your desire should be contrary to your husband, which I do take this position now. The ESV adopts the first option of view. Your desire should be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. The Net Bible uses stronger words. You will want to control your husband, but he will dominate you. And there are some women out here who are so masculine, where you do, and I'm going to say this and I'm not going to change my mind. There are some women out here that are so masculine that your approach to them will have to be of a more masculine posture. All right, because in case you forgot, we have women boxers out here and who are champs. We have a woman out here now, Clarissa Shields, I believe her name is. That woman is so masculine. And her argument is that there's not enough competition in the women's division, where she now wants to fight men. She now wants to fight men. But I found it interesting now that it was reported that she did have a sparring match with a man, and the man knocked her on her behind, and they had to run to check and make sure that she was okay. 1 second, Mr. McCon. Okay, my apologies for that. Like I said, there are women boxers out there, and those women are extremely masculine. So again, be careful. You might have to go toe-to-toe with women like that. There are women MMA fighters. Okay? Those women are extremely masculine. And you better be careful. Because if you try to usurp any type of authority over her, she might put you in a sleeper hold, and the next thing you know, you're not going to wake up until the next morning. Or she might put you in a headlock or some type of karate move and making you tap out. I don't believe that women should be firefighters. I don't believe that women should be in the military fighting. I don't believe that women should be police officers. I don't believe that women should be security guards. I don't believe that women should be construction workers. All of those are masculine positions, and I don't agree with it. That's just me personally. I don't believe that women should be bodybuilders to the point where now their biceps and triceps and their quads are bigger than men. But I am an advocate of women keeping themselves in shape. Every man likes a well-rounded, figured woman. Absolutely. But not a damn bodybuilder. Now all of a sudden now she could bench 325 and you can only bench 150. What kind of woman, what kind of man wants a woman like that? Well, let's read on. The Net Bible uses stronger words. You will want to control your husband, but he will dominate you. Verse 3 takes the wife's action as negative and the husband's actions as positive. The wife is devoted to usurping her husband's authority, and the husband must exercise righteous or godly rule in order to overcome her attempt of usurpation. Once again, view 3, which I take, that the wife's actions as negative and the husband's action as positive. The wife is devoted to usurping her husband's authority, and the husband must exercise righteous rule in order to overcome her attempt to usurp anything that's inside of the house. This view relies heavily on the parallel construction of Genesis 4 and 7. It appears to be a modern view, first advocated by a person by the name of this woman by the name of Susan Foy in the 1970s. While the interpretation of Genesis 3:16 we adopt will not have a significant impact on our understanding of marital hierarchy and gender roles. This is because the creation account teaches hierarchy prior to the fall. Adam was first created. 1 Timothy, on the 2nd chapter, oh, excuse me, Mr. McCall. 1 Timothy, the 2nd chapter, here we go. 1 Timothy, let me just pull it up here on my side here. Give me a second. 1 Timothy 2:13. 1 Timothy 2:13. Here we are. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. Watch this now. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. Adam was not deceived. Adam should have known better, because all rulership and dominion was given to him, and Adam was not deceived. But the woman being deceived was in the transgression. And we'll expound upon that a little bit later. Adam had a protective role in Genesis 2:15. Adam had a teaching role in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, verses 16 and 17, and also in the book of Genesis, the 3rd chapter, verses 2 to 3. So you can just read that on your own for time constraints here. I don't want to go too long. Adam presented the human race in the garden, not Eve. And that's in the book of Romans, the 5th. I do want to read that. Romans, the 5th chapter. Romans, the 5th chapter. I'm going to read verses 12 to 21. Watch this now. Hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of Elohim is shed abroad in our hearts by the Ruach HaKodesh, which is given unto us. When it says given to us, it would have to be those of us now that are following Torah. For when we were yet without strength or without Torah, in due time the Mashiach died for the unrighteous. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die. Yet peradventure for a good man some will even dare to die. But the Father commendeth his love towards us in that while we were yet sinners, the Mashiach died for us. Much more than being now justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. The Mashiach is this mediator. He is the one that speaks on behalf of us, for us now, to the Father. I've shared so many times before that this is a court scene. The adversary, the prosecutor is making out all of these allegations against the nation of Israel. We have the Mashiach as the defense attorney fighting against the prosecutor to say, listen, you know what? But these are the ones that came out of darkness into the marvelous light. These are the ones that endured to the end. These are the ones that follow Torah. So these now should be justified by the mediator, Yahushua HaMashiach. Well, let's read on. For if then when we were enemies, we were reconciled to the Father by the death of his Son, who is the mediator, much more being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. And not only so, but we also in the Father, through our sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach, by whom we have now received the atonement. Read down to verse 21. Oh, you know what, Mr. McCall? My apologies. I'm just reading. I started up too early. But anyway, let me read on down to 21. I had read actually from verse, I think it was verse 6 I had started from. I was supposed to have been starting from verse 12. But again, anybody want my PowerPoint presentation, I would give it to you for free. We like free stuff, right? Everybody likes free stuff. But the free things that I'm giving you, is not going to harm you. All right, so I want to make sure that's understood. Verse 12, Romans 5 and 12. Wherefore, as by one man sin into the world, and death by sin. So by one man sin entered into the world, we know this now to be Adam. Adam's responsibility was to protect, to guard, to dress the garden. Adam was a priest. And death by sin. And so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, because Moses now gives us, he now puts Israel into the position where I set before you life and death, choose life. That's the easy version of that. Even over them that had not sinned after the similitude of Adam's transgression, so is the figure of him that was to come, which is the Mashiach, but not as the offense, so as is the free gift. For if through the offense of one, many be dead, much more grace of the Father. And the gift of grace, and the gift by grace, which is by one man, the Mashiach have abounded unto many. And not as it was by one that sinned, so is the gift. For the judgment was by one to condemnation, but the free gift is of many offenses unto justification. For if by one man's offense death reigned by one, watch this now, much more than which receive abundance of grace and the gift of righteousness shall one reign in the life by one, Yahushua HaMashiach. Therefore, as by the offense of one judgment came upon all men, the condemnation, even so by the righteousness of one, the free gift came upon all men into justification into life. Hallelujah. Whereas by one man's disobedience, many were made sinners. Because now we have a situation where everything that comes from Adam, after he was expelled from the garden, it is now created in the image of falling Adam. Seth was created in the image of fallen Seth. Now, the word for image, not likeness, the word for image is Selim. Okay? The word for image is Selim. The word for likeness is different. And we'll talk about that later. For as by one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so by the obedience of one shall many be made righteous. Moreover, the law entered that the offense might abound. But when sin abounded, grace did much more abound, that sin hath reigned unto death. Even so might grace reign through righteousness until eternal life by Yahushua HaMashiach. Hallelujah. And it also has here that you can see a book on masculinity in Christianity, chapter 6, for the full argument and interactions with egalitarians in this response. We almost finished this, almost done. So, regardless of which of the views of the three views is correct, it is still the case that the father put the husband in authority over his wife, and that sin has introduced corruption into this relationship. This is not the case for egalitarians, since they deny creational hierarchy and want to ground latter biblical male headship in the fall. Sounds to me like egalitarians are LGBTQ, lesbians, bisexual, gays, transvestites, and queers. I think that's what it means. All right, so this is what it sounds like to me. So egalitarians thus have a strong motivation for adopting a form of view too, with the particular emphasis that man's rule is introduced as the father's judgment upon Eve. And no, that is not my argument at all. Let's read on. Interpretive challenges of Bereshit 3:16. While we should not root our understanding of male and female roles in Genesis 3:16, it is still worth attempting to properly understand. Let us make mention of the interpretive challenges of this verse as well as likely conclusions. A closer look at Bereshit 3:16. First, there is a question of the meaning of the rare word teshukwa, or teshukwa, yes, teshukwa, which is usually translated desire. Watch this now. This is the reason why the Hebrew is very important, but at the same time, if you read the story closely, a lot of the times the word actually explains itself, all right? And I'm going to have to do a part 2 to this, which is usually translated desire. It is only used 2 other times in the Old Testament, a latter chapter in Genesis 4:7 to describe sins, to describe sins, desire for Cain, and then in the Song of Solomon 7:10, but I found now in 7:11 in the Masoretic text, for parent sexual desires. I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me. But the Hebrew word is teshukwa, and so we know that this is of a sexual nature. I am my beloved, and his desire is for me. But when you look at the word desire in relation to with Cain, now we know that this sin or this desire is associated with sin, and so we know that the adversary had a desire to overcome Cain, which he did. So it is our responsibility now to master self. All right. Cain was not able to master self. And if you're not able to master self, you will then now become accessible to the vows of the adversary. However, philologist Andrew McIntosh had recently argued that teshukwa does not mean desire, but rather it means concern, preoccupation, single-minded, devotion, focus. His argument is based on the words used in the Hebrew Bible, especially in Genesis 4:7, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and comparative phylogeny of Arabic. McIntosh's proposal of devotion for teshukwa fits all 3 passages using the word in the Hebrew Bible. Woman's devotion would be to her husband, and devotion, commitment, desire, I don't have a problem with what he's arguing. That is her ultimate goal, is to show her loyalty and devotion to her husband. But this doesn't change the fact that Adam did not take on a patriarchal role or position or role of masculinity when it was brought to his attention that Eve had had a conversation with the adversary. But he actually now took a lesser position. And so Adam is now reminded that he now has to be the hierarchy or the patriarch in the family, and the woman must be reminded of her role and her position inside of the relationship. And being that she usurped her authority over Adam, she won. She did. She won. Women are their oppressors. Let me see how does that go here. Hold on for one quick second. Make sure I quote this right. Isaiah the 3rd chapter, verse 12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. So we want to make sure that we actually understand roles and positions in all of this. And once again, Isaiah the 3rd chapter, verses 3 and 12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy path. Let's read on. Genesis 3:16, sin's devotion was to Cain. Genesis 4 and 7, and the beloved's devotion was to the woman. Psalm 7 and 10. So we see that context is going to be very important. Cain's devotion fell to sin. The woman's devotion or desire is of a sexual nature. This desire that the woman was given or was promised by the adversary was that she would now be contrary to her husband, or she will look to usurp authority over him, but he must rule over her. Second, there is a debate over the construction of the Hebrew preposition el, the aleph and lamed, whether the woman's devotion is to or for her husband or against him. Let's read it again, because Hebrew, the way that we're formulating these sentences is going to be very important. So the prepositional phrase el, whether the woman's devotion is to, for her husband, or against him. The above 2016 edition of the ESV recognizes this issue and thus footnotes contrary to, with, or shall be toward. And you can see now Genesis 4 and 7. But it says, now interestingly, the above 2016 edition was a change from the 2011 edition that preferred a form of the footnote reading, your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Genesis 3:16. This is all about Genesis 3:16 now. The adversative of the preposition el is rare but possible, and examples include Cain rising up against Abel. Genesis 4 and 8. And Yahuwah's anger burning against Israel, where we have el, Yashra'al, Numbers 32 and 14. And for syntax, you can look at a guy by the name of Waltke O'Connor, An Introduction to Biblical Hebrew Syntax, page 193. I just want to make sure that I'm as thorough as possible. The action in these examples is still to, toward the person. but the context shows the action is hostile and thus against, contrary to the person. And so that is a hostile position if now we have the woman now acting in contrary to her husband. That is a hostile position. And being that men are the way that they are, we are protectors, providers. And what usually happens, which is a man has to use so much discipline, when he sees a hostile attempt against his authority, oftentimes men would get very defensive and it can get violent. And this is where the man has to now learn how to control his behavior, especially when he sees it's coming from the weaker vessel. And this is how the man he must always learn how to control his temper with his Isha, with his children, and even with family and friends. He can't be a loose cannon. You have to use discretion with every single thing that you do. Everything that you do. Let me read on. I think we only have 2 more slides. The action in these examples is still toward the person, but the context shows the action is hostile and thus against, contrary to the person. However, if Macintosh is correct that Teshuvah means single-minded devotion, it is hard to understand how the curse brought woman such a devotion to undermining her husband's authority. Thus, or this does not seem true in life, nor does it fit the typical use of devotion. Therefore, it is more likely that Teshuvah is used positively of a woman's devotion to her husband, and that the typical meaning of, to, or toward for the prepositional L is being used. A close look at Bereshit 3:16. Third, there is the question whether the word mashal, usually translated rule, is used positively or negatively in this context. To rule or to have dominion has 2 definitions, Mr. Picard. And the reason why I say it has 2 definitions, because the way that you rule pre-exiling of Adam and his Isha in the garden versus mashal when they're now expelled. So how do you make this word mashal work in the garden versus outside of the garden? I'm going to leave that one up to you to decide and give me a comment on what you found out. The word emphasizes dominion, defined as rule, govern, have dominance over in the New International Dictionary of Old Testament Theology and Exegesis, Volume 2, edition, Van Gemran, page 1136. It is often used as a positive sense, as with Judges 8:32, 2 Samuel 32:3, Isaiah 40:10, Isaiah 63:19, Micah 5:2, Zechariah 6:13, Zechariah 9:10, and Proverbs 17:2. However, there's always that but. However, it could be understood negatively here if the emphasis is on control or dominion, especially in the context of the Father's judgment on Eve. Fourth, there's an issue on how to translate the imperfect form of the verb mashal. In the second clause of Genesis 3:16, whether to indicate future certainty, he will, future tense, he will rule, prescription, He must rule. Did you see that? He will rule. Prescription to keep order inside of the house. He must rule, or potentially he can or may rule. All are possible, as English can express the nature of the imperfect Hebrew verb using the model must, can, may, and should. The best meaning must be determined by the context. In an ending, regardless of how we understand Genesis 3:16, the point still stands that the fall introduced frustration into the marriage relationship. This is true even if view 1 is adopted. It was not that a husband's authority and a wife's submission was introduced as a result of the fall, as some egalitarians claim happened in Genesis 3:16, but rather that this hierarchy relationship was part of the created order and was now frustrated by the fall. Like all things, a husband's authority and a wife's submission are subject to corruption because of sin. Yet, hierarchy between the sexes comes from the creation order, not the fall. It is not something to be overcome, by something to be embraced as the Father's design. So, Mishpachah, that is today's lesson. I pray that you were able to gather some divine, righteous information out of it. All right. I'm your brother, Kasada Bar, and I pray once again that you were able to pick up something from the lesson. If anybody have any questions with anything, you can email me at newstudy, S-T-U-D-Y, new, N-E-W, age at A-G-E, at AOL.com. All right. And if there's any questions, you can call in at 678-744-7493. If this message has been a blessing to you, if it has been a blessing to you, as we continue to build with the congregation of Yashra'al, we should be up and running in our new building by the third week of January, if it be the Father's will. So your donations and your free will offerings will be gladly appreciated. If you could send it to $Kasad Abba, K-A-S-A-D-A-H-B-A. Once again, that's $Kasad-A-H-B-A. It would be gladly appreciated. And I pray that the Father continue to bless each and every one of you, that you can have that peace and shalom inside of your house. Once that peace and shalom is held inside of the house, the windows of Shamayim will open up, and there's nothing that you will not be able to accomplish. And with that, I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom. Until the next time, Mishpachah, peace and blessings to you.